Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Beyond Day One. You know, AI is changing the learning curve for young career professionals. And, just think of it. There was a time that the way that young professionals used to learn their job was through asking questions, trial and error, mentorship, or a boss that helped to give them answers to their questions, and then gradual responsibility. Well, in the marketplace today, and a combination of how people lead, but even more importantly, in today's age, the use of AI, that learning curve is kind of shifted. Not only has it shifted, though, but it's left a gap. Last week, we were talking about the AI inflation, uh, the AI confidence inflation. And we're going to kind of continue in that conversation and talk about some of the things that we can do in order to overcome that gap. In order to do that, I've brought back with me my good friends, John DeZuba, and I've also got with me the one and only Philip Rich. Gentlemen, we're talking about here the continuation of the AI confidence inflation. I also like the term Philip brought to the table last week, skill fishing, and
Yeah.
that stuck with me during the week. Philip, that's a really good tool. Just Philip, just really quickly, briefly, explain what skill fishing is.
Yeah, it's when a candidate for a job, and we've seen it a lot with Gen Z, they will put things on their application or on their resume that basically inflates their skills a little bit or kind of presents that they're possibly more knowledgeable or more competent than reality would actually suggest. And it's designed, of course, to make a good impression to give employers the idea that, oh man, this person here, they've got awesome qualifications. It seems like they're highly skilled. But of course, when the person actually gets hired from that information and they settle into their role, sometimes the opposite is found to be true. They're still basically struggling to make sense of their job.
Yeah, that's so true. And I want to remind you of something that is the reason why we started, back in the end of 2024, when this idea hit about creating content and material and working with Gen Z and young career professionals. It was because the statistics said 6 out of 10, 6 out of 10, that's 60% of early career professionals, Gen Z hires, were not making it through their first 90 days. And as you dig into this more, and as we become more aware of some of the whys and talk to young professionals, talk to the people that hire them, look at the studies and the research that's connected to it, you begin to see that one of the things is this skill gap, that they can interview well, but then when it's time to sit down and do the job, that confidence inflation that AI produced is very present, and it produces some real problems because that person can't necessarily do the things they proclaim they could do with their resume. So, in this episode, we want to talk about how young professionals can produce high level outputs for real. Because, see, what they can do now is using AI, they can create high level outputs, but sometimes that happens before they've actually developed the underlying skill and judgment for that particular thing. We used the example last week of the concept of building an Excel spreadsheet using AI, but not having concepts of what makes each one of those frames produce the result, or one of the cells produce the end result that it does. So they can tell AI what to do, but not necessarily understand what it actually takes to do it, which means, just so you know, the middle part here, if they can't really evaluate whether what's in those cells is accurate or not.
Right.
They don't have any clue about that. They're just looking at output and finished project. So we want to talk a little bit about that gap and talk about what makes the difference, what stands out between professionals who are getting somewhere and those who are not getting anywhere. You know, John, when we talk about this skill gap, what are you seeing from your perspective?
I mean, when you put it plainly, um, AI is like a crutch, and I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but uh, it really kind of highlights the emphasis on that boundary that we have to set with AI. Um, I've seen it around in my workplace where people just what you're talking about. I've seen it happen right in front of me where, hey, when someone comes over to someone's desks and ask them like, hey, how'd you put this thing together? How did you know how to build this together? How did you know like that this computer would turn on, knowing that these settings are enabled or whatever? Um, and it's kind of embarrassing to hear that the answer is just, well, I asked Gemini to do it. I asked ChatGPT to do it, and it just did it, and it worked. And there was that it was like such a hollow answer, and then like all of a sudden managers just kind of dumbfounded. They're like, okay, well, it works, you did the thing, but now we're just kind of sitting here with a hollow answer where AI just did it for you. I want to kind of close that gap. A huge major practice, like we talked about last week as well, is that you want to make sure, if you're asking AI to do something, you have to know what you're asking it to do. If I'm asking AI to build a spreadsheet, I want to let me build the spreadsheet first. You can even ask AI to show you how to do it, but let me do it first before I actually ask it to do it for me. That way I know what it's doing. Or, in other terms, you don't have to talk about spreadsheets, but you can just talk about the whole process of, how do I build this project together? Like, don't just do it for me, but show me how to do it. And that boundary puts you in the advantage and keeps you ahead. I don't want to say ahead of AI, but ahead of your own inflated confidence, especially regarding these interviews and these first 90 days that you experience at the workplace.
Yeah, that's good, John. You know, I'll give you another example that fits in an area that I dabble in to my frustration sometimes a lot, and that's LinkedIn. You
Mm.
know, one of the things that so many people on LinkedIn, when it comes to AI, who are talking positively about AI, that's a whole nother ballgame. You know, they talk about this concept of writing post, and so many people are turning to AI to write post for them. But there is this thing that is true, and it's a true criticism that sometimes you can read a post and you can tell it was AI written versus the reality of somebody spending real time and putting thought together. You know, and it's because AI doesn't have your voice. So it comes across as very much you know, I almost hate to say like a magazine or newspaper article because people do write or at least they used to write magazine and newspaper articles, but they were just very bland. You know, they were just, here's the information. And, you know, somehow or another, when left to its own devices, AI can leave you with circular reasoning and no real answers. You know, it can say a lot of good things that ultimately come out to feeling like they don't necessarily mean something. When AI becomes useful, it's because of what you just remember. You are the reason AI is useful. It's what you bring to the table, it's what you input, it's what you ask it for, it's the creativity that you engage, it's the detail that you look at, it's the voice that you give it and teaching it and training it to use your voice or to approach things the way that you do that make all of the difference in AI. And then it's your ongoing editing and involvement in that portion of the engagement that further refines it and gets it down to what you want it to be. And then it becomes a far more useful tool. But let me give you these five things real quick, or we'll give you these five things real quick that help professionals stand out in the AI era. Number one, just like I was saying, use AI wisely. Um, just like I just explained, you are AI in one sense. It's a tool processing what you're asking it to do. And so, AI in one sense is only as good as you are. Any thought on that, Philip?
Yeah, there's a famous saying, "Garbage in, garbage out." Is one of the most common phrases in the computing world, and I would caution people who are maybe a little bit too heavily relying on AI, especially like for instance ChatGPT. If you just take the time to look up where ChatGPT gets a lot of its information from, it's called a common crawl. And what that is their chatbots going out and searching the common web. We're talking about Reddit is one of the most prevalent places where ChatGPT gets information from. Wikipedia is another one. Personal blogs is another one. So you got to think about the quality that's going into an LLM and what that might mean in terms of the output that you're going to get from it before you just sign on wholeheartedly and say, well, okay, whatever this thing says, it has to be correct. I would definitely make sure that whatever output you get from ChatGPT or any other type of AI bot or whatever the case is, always verify. Do your research. Make sure you're doing your homework independently using something other than AI, like just basic Google search or other types of academic papers you can look at to make sure that what's being said or what's being put out there is not inaccurate.
Yeah. And Philip, that was actually point number 2. Verify your AI outputs. Never just say, boy, this looks good to me, and run with it. Like Philip was just saying, you want to verify it, which is why things like spreadsheets and some of the other tools that you put together are so important. And it's because you just can't, you just pulling a spreadsheet out because AI put it together and handing it off puts both you and the company, you and the business at jeopardy
Yeah.
because you don't even know how to check it.
Right.
You just see the outputs there. And so you have to take it a step further, and understanding helps. So, point 1, use AI wisely. Number 2, verify all AI outputs. Even when it comes to writing like articles and things like that, you want to reread those pieces. It's not, you're thinking, I just want to save time and I don't want to have anything to do with it. And so you just let it rip. And then you just put it out there. No, you want to read that. Does this have my voice? Does this really say what I wanted to say? Does it come to the results that I wanted to come to in the end? You've got to consider all of that. Number 3, think independently. And Philip, again, just mentioned that briefly in what he was saying, but AI requires you to be thoughtful. It requires you to be considerate. And so you've got to be an independent thinker when it comes to AI. You can't just fall into the AI thought process and let that be your thinking. John, you have a quick thought about that?
Yeah, I one of the upsides question mark to AI is that it's very conversation based. And so much like you're talking to a regular person, it's so easy to just ask your language model like, where did you get this information from? Challenge the like it's almost like
Mhm.
an actual conversation. Challenge the output and actually ask it to verify its own information or ask where it got the
Yep.
info from. That'll save you so much headache in the long run. And the best part is it'll just tell you right then and there. You can be thorough. You can ask the same prompt to different AIs and see what kind of results it gets you, and have AI double check itself. But that's a whole different rabbit hole. But the my first thought is honestly just challenge the AI right then and there. You can just talk to it and just say what you feel like you would want to say to a regular person.
Yeah, that's good. And also thinking independently as you're working with other people on these tools, and even challenging other people's outputs. I'm going to give you point 4 and 5 really quickly. Point 4, communicate clearly, and point 5, read the room. Again, human skills don't disappear because AI has arrived. So you're still going to need to be a good communicator and work on your communication skills. And at the same time, you got to continue reading the room, understanding what's happening around you so you can adapt and adjust at all times. I want you to go back and look at some of the previous episodes that we've done on reading the room. I think you'll find those very helpful for you. Well, that's it. We're out of here. See you next time.